Hello, welcome to this Patreon special. It's a sort of, but not quite, arcade shootout thing for Pacman games. I'm not going to cover all of them because there's a lot of them. What I'm going to do though is just look at a few to get a flavour of what's out there. And I know some of them are terrible. The first one we're going to look at is Muncher from Silversoft, released in 1982. And this game is obviously different as soon as you start playing. Gone is a little wobbly Pacman, and instead you've got a severed head wobbling about collecting dots. Because of the way the maze is laid out, it's quite tricky to sometimes control the direction because of these little steps that you can see, and you can sometimes get stuck there while the ghosts catch up with you. The movement is really smooth, which is unusual for an early Pacman game. Usually it's character-based movement, which we'll see in a couple of the others. And the usual rules apply. You go around munching the dots. There are power pills, although not in the corners. There are left and right tunnels that take you across the other side of the maze. If you eat a power pill, the ghosts turn blue, and you can then kill them. And also, every now and again you will get fruit, although in the original the fruit appears underneath the central part, and in this game what actually happens is the centre part opens up on the sides and allows you to collect those large cherries in the middle. Speed-wise, it's not bad actually. It's quite playable. The controls are quite good, apart from those little steps in the maze which make it really tricky to sometimes control. Sound is used well, the usual machine code sound effects that are always in early Spectrum games, particularly 16K, well even 48K early games had them as well. But it's not a bad game overall. It's quite playable, quite easy to get into. The keys are a little strange to lay out. The other interesting thing is when you actually die, you get the Pacman animation where he folds in on himself. So I was wondering whether this was actually the Pacman game and all they've done is just change the graphics, because, like I say, if you watch carefully, when you die, it actually becomes a Pacman. Anyway, let's move on to the next game. The next one is Gobbler Ghost, released by CDS, also in 1982. And this game kicks off and starts playing as soon as it's loaded. It doesn't give you a chance to press any key or prepare any keys or anything. The Pacman looks like a Pacman character. The ghosts look like the ghosts. The maze is very similar to the arcade in colour and layout. There aren't those odd steps that you got in the previous game. The ghosts, although different colours, actually act the same way, so once they start chasing you, they'll just follow you all around the maze until you hit a power pill. And then you can kill all of them, and they don't actually run back to the centre of the maze like the original game, they just appear there and carry on. You've got the tunnels left and right to take you across to the other side of the maze, and of course power pills, like I've said. Control is good. Once you start moving, it will continue in that direction, and it's quite snappy, works quite well. The ghosts do move at quite a pace though. It can sometimes be tricky, especially when they're all following you and you're heading towards a power pill. The animation is there when you die. Sounds okay, not as good as obviously the original arcade game, but we'll see the official conversion later on. Overall, it's not a bad game. Quite a good Pacman variant. The screen is well used, sounds well used, and yeah, if I'd have bought this, I'd have been very pleased at the time. Talking of which, the Pacman game that I did buy back in the day was Gobbleman by Arctic Computing in 1982. Okay, the game is character based and moves in character squares, not smooth at all. The Pacman looks like a Pacman, although he's not animated. He just changes at least he changes direction when you change direction, so it's not just the same. The ghosts move pretty quickly. They are different colours. And the maze is drawn sort of like the arcade version, but again there are little parts of it where you have to be quite accurate with control. There are the power pills there. The sound is a bit of a letdown, it's just very small beeps. Even when you eat one of the ghosts, it's just a small beep. which is a bit of a shame really. Another letdown is when you die, the Pacman doesn't fold in on himself like the arcade one. You just get a jumble of characters. Now somebody said, when I reviewed it a while back, probably one of the early shows, they said that the characters were actually spelling out Arctic Computing, but I've slowed it down and I can't see that at all. The other annoying thing about this is sometimes when you start off in the middle, the ghosts head straight down and kill you and you haven't got a chance to get out of the way, which can lead to sort of the instant death syndrome, which is a real pain in early games. Okay, to sum up, for an early 1982 game, this is the one I bought. I was a bit disappointed. It wasn't like the arcade. Well, it wasn't arcade perfect, but it played and it did what it's supposed to do, although, yeah, it could have been a lot better. Moving on. The next game is Nasher, released by R&R Software, also in 1983. Well, the first thing that gets you with this is the actual size of the characters. They are very large. Usually early games, 82, 83, had character-based graphics. Here you can see they are massive. And subsequently the maze is only small, which makes it quite easy, he says, dying spectacularly, quite easy to complete this game, or at least complete a level. The usual things happen. There are power pills that allow you to kill the ghosts, and when you die you do get the Pacman animation, which is quite nice. The controls can be a little bit sticky at times, particularly around areas just above the central bit where you have to go up and you have to move in several directions. Another issue I found is that the character doesn't actually continue in the direction once you set off. You have to keep poking the keys or keep holding the keys down to make sure he moves continually, which is not like the arcade and also not like many other games that we'll be looking at today. Apart from that, the graphics are nice and large. You do get the bonus fruit appearing at the bottom now and again. Yeah, I like this game. Because the maze is reduced, it's easier to get through the mazes and get on to the next one. Controls are good, quite responsive, apart from getting stuck in certain parts of the maze. And the sound effects are adequate. Yeah, they're not beeps, they're nice machine code variants, so very good. Yep, I like this one. I like this one a lot. Okay, let's move on to the next one. This is Maze Chase by Houston Consultants, released in 1983. I'm not really sure where to start with this game. The graphics are tiny and moving character-based jumps. The sound, apart from the wibbly sound effect at the start and end when you lose a life, is okay I suppose, but the rest of the sound effects are a bit dull. When you lose a life, all the pills reappear again, meaning you've got to start the level from the very beginning. There's hearts and what look like lemons to collect. If you collect a lemon or a heart, the chasing ghosts turn magenta. Sometimes they turn back again rather quickly, so I'm not really sure what's going on. The maze is a sort of hashed green and black thing that doesn't really look good. The man isn't animated, and this is a 48k game. I mean, there is on the same tape a 16k version, but this is the 48k version. It doesn't really do the machine justice, to be honest. Controls are a bit tricky because it's the cursor keys, which are really not suited to playing games when they're all in a line. And everything's a bit jerky and the ghosts don't really have that much intelligence. It just doesn't look right and it doesn't feel right and it doesn't play right. Moving on. And we're still in 1983 with these releases. And the next one is Munchman by DK Tronics, a very early release by Derek Brewster. Okay, here we have the little Pacman munching away on the dots. The actual sound effect that's going continuously, which is like a series of dots, actually emphasises the fact that the graphics are character-based. And if you sort of take a step back and look at the game as a whole rather than watching the little Pacman, you can see that all of the characters and all the movement is done on the sound of the dots. So it sort of overemphasises the fact, which is a bit of a shame. Although I know what they were trying to do, or I know what Derek was trying to do, and that was to recreate the Pac-Man sound of the arcades with the continual sound. The ghosts are all there, although they don't seem to have a lot of intelligence. Sometimes you can go straight past them, and they'll just ignore you. They won't sort of try and chase you. If you eat a power pill, they turn white, and you can then eat them, of course. The maze is okay. It's not the same colour, it's green, but it does the job. It's easy to navigate. There aren't any of those little places where you can get stuck. The movement is good, so once you start moving in a direction, you will continue moving in the direction until you change. It's not too bad actually. Difficulty is okay. You've got the side tunnels that take you from one side of the screen to the other, and I've yet to see any bonus fruit, but you never know, it may appear. Yeah, it's a pity about that sound that just overemphasises the jerkiness of everything. Everything moves on the same beat, which is a bit of a shame, but never mind. Overall, not a bad game actually. Quite enjoyed playing this. Could do with smoother graphics. The sound is okay, I suppose, but it's just beeps. Apart from that, not a bad game, not a bad effort for a very early game. And also, when you die, you don't get the Pac-Man animation, which is a bit of a shame. But it is an early game. We're talking 1983 here, so you can't expect brilliant things. Right then, okay, moving on. And the next game is an interesting game. It's called Z-Man by DLJ Software, released also in 1983. This game has a very interesting story. It was originally released in 1983. And then the company got into trouble by Atari because it was so close to the arcade Pac-Man game that they weren't happy. However, then Atari offered to buy the game and put it out themselves a year later in 1984. So this game is almost identical to the official release. There were a few tweaks, but not much. The game that's available for download is copyrighted 1985, so I don't know what the story there is, whether Atari let them make some modifications. However, if you look at the game, here on the left is Z-Man by DLJ, and on the right is the official Atari software version Pac-Man from 1984. And as you can see, very similar. Both of these games have sound that's very nearly like the arcade game. The Pac-Man moves, although it's in character squares, it does move quite well. The ghosts are all there. The maze is, as you would expect, quite close to the arcade. The power pills work as you'd expect. Sound is very good, which is a bonus, but it would be if Atari wanted to buy this game and put it out themselves. Control is good, allowing you to get round without getting stuck anywhere, but then again the actual maze design helps with that. There aren't little places where you can get stuck like some of the other earlier games. The Pac-Man dies properly with the right sound effect and animation, and it's all good. All of the features are here. A good game then. The original by DJL, and of course the official Atari Soft version, both of which are very close to the arcade game, and if you like Pac-Man, then one of these two games will definitely give you your Pac-Man fix. Finally, moving on to a 1987 game and classic muncher released by Bubble Bus Software. There's a nice little tune on the intro screen before we finally get into the game. And wow, another game with massive graphics, and that's interesting, those ghosts start flickering. That's very reminiscent of the Atari VCX, the Atari VCS stroke 2600 game, where the ghost sprites were all over the place, flickering around the screen. That's an interesting problem there. It's the same on real hardware, and it's same on the emulator. So, I wonder what's going on there. Let's ignore that for the time being. The graphics are large, well animated. They look like the arcade version. The maze is well drawn. There aren't many places where you can get stuck. Movement is really smooth, which is good. There's lots of different features on here. On the second level, for example, this looks like something that looks like a sort of teleport thing. I've no idea what that is. It sort of whisks you about and you zip around onto the other side of the screen. I suppose it's another version of the tunnel, whereby there's no tunnel in this one. You use this sort of strange transport thing. I'm not overly convinced it's a good thing to do. The game then is fine. The sound is a bit of a letdown. There's just some sort of plip sounds when you eat something, and there's no death sound, which is a bit of a shame, because Pac-Man, we all like the Pac-Man death sound, don't we? But at least the death animation is there when he rolls back on himself. Right, so there you go. That was a quick roundup of a few of the many Pac-Man clones to be found on the spectrum. Which one I think's best is really down to taste and what you like in a game. The large graphics of classic Muncher are good. Gobbler Ghost was quite good. The smaller graphics of things like Gobbleman are okay. The changed graphics in Muncher for Silversoft didn't quite like the severed head flapping about all the time. So I suppose if you're looking for arcade perfection, then you'll need Z-Man or the official Pac-Man from Atarisoft. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching, and thanks for supporting the show.